like Christians to the lions in the Roman Colosseum. Let's just feed them to Dan Hooker. I want to see it.
All right, welcome to another episode of Two Fight Fans, where we talk about all things in combat sports. I am your Saturn fan, Colin.
And I am a very Zen fan, Stuart.
I am the opposite of that right now. UFC 305 happened this weekend, and yes.
And we got perfect canonical order to
no,
the UFC Middleweight Division.
We are in the dark ages right now. We have gone backwards.
Wrong. Much like European historians, there's going to be a lot. Hold on. I need to make this caveat at the beginning. A lot of the analogies we are going to make will play into in academia. There is a high amount of weird white supremacist racists that are involved in medieval studies and Renaissance studies of European history. We're going to have a lot of analogies to medieval and late medieval period European history this podcast. In no way do I condone any of the weird pseudoscience, phrenology, DNA, white people are just built different kind of bullshit that a lot of these people do. But we have entered the late Middle Ages of the middleweight division, and it feels, you know what? It feels good. This feels like the Battle of Hastings. It's a nice delineation between the past and the future, and I like it. Yeah, it's good.
All right.
It's good.
All right. Well, where we start on this? Are we going to start at the first fights of the night, or are we going to start with the major heartbreak that I had to endure?
Well, I guess here's the thing. Do we want to? Because I think we could wax poetic for like an hour on maybe 2 fights on this card, and then the rest of the card could take maybe 5 minutes. So do you want to cover off on those 5 minutes first, or should we just jump straight in?
Sure. Let's get rid of that first. Then let's get some of those there.
The other 5 minutes. What did you think of the co-main event? Steve Erceg versus Kara France.
Okay. So very entertaining for for as long as it was in. I thought Steve Erceg was actually getting like some good combination where I was like, and when the fight first started, I went, uh-oh. Like, I think, Steve Erceg is, the real deal. He might piece up Kara France, and he was like getting in his shots. He had good combination work, and it just, I was just like, this is going to be not a quick one, but this is going to be like, okay, like Steve Erceg is going to continue to climb his way back up the ladder. And
what was the cardinal sin he committed in this fight, Colin?
Apparently just backing straight out the same way over and over again.
For four times. It was the 4th time that Kara France threw that combination.
Yeah.
And he backed up on the straight, and Kara France realized, if I just like leap forward slightly, I'll catch him, and he did.
Yeah, and Kara France has way heavier hands than I realized or expected. It's kind of, we talked a lot about like Inoue for being as strong and like thumpy as he is for like his like small weight division. Yeah, I don't think Kara France is as like strong as that, as thunderous power as Inoue, but he like really surprised me with how like thunderous he was. And again, he hasn't fought in like a year and a half or something. So I think it's easy for people to forget that. And I'm one of them. I didn't know that. I think he now poses a huge new challenge in this division. Like, because I thought, like these Japanese like wrestlers who are coming in, they might be able to take the division by storm, maybe even beat Pantoja there. But now they've got this like explosive striker they have to deal with, and I'm not sure the rest of the division is ready for this.
Yeah, I mean, he has lost again to like really, we talked about it in our preview, big, heavy top control grapplers he struggles with. I think kind of like everyone at the kind of city kickboxing gym out of New Zealand. But he does hit hard. I think his power was slightly over embellished by the fact that Erceg 3 months ago was in that like knockdown drag out war with Pantoja.
Sure, sure.
I think kind of like the Cheeto Vera, Sean O'Malley, and then Cheeto going against Figueiredo. I think Ursug's chin got a little squishy. But I mean, he made, again, this was one of these instances where I thought Ursug just had a donkey brains kind of like lapse where he was like, I'm just going to keep backing straight up. And it's like, you can't have that same reaction 4 times in a row to the same combination.
Well, see, now this is the second time he's done something that tactically is
I know.
very poor. So now we're starting to think
Mhm.
like, is this a mistake? Is this like just a
This is
lackadaisical brazen, or is this habit where he
yeah.
actually, that's not a good sign.
I think you're right. And I think like one of these things is this is his 5th UFC fight in total. Um I
Oh,
if
that's
you
it?
Yeah, if you expedite some of these guys too fast, they don't develop correctly, right?
Mm,
Like they go to a title shot and then they lose and then their confidence and like he probably has confidence like I don't need to fix much because I almost won the title off of Pantoja, right?
mhm.
Rather than naturally developing over 6, 7, 8 fights before getting to the title. And I think that can really fuck it up, especially when he has this knockout drag out war and then a brutal knockout loss to Kai Kara France.
Yeah.
So it was a good showing from Kai Kara France. Good fighters capitalize on their opponent's mistakes, and that's exactly what Kai Kara France did. But like I also was like, Ursig, you can't be having these lapses in defense at this level. And so I worry about his development overall if this is gonna like really set him back, where maybe if he'd been given 1 or 2 more like ladder rungs before getting to Pantoja, he might have improved dramatically.
Mm.
Uh, but I'm excited to see Kai Kara France, even though he lost to Amir Albazi, who should be the rightful next title challenger. I think they're probably going to give it to Kai Kara France. That sounds like what they're planning on next for Pantoja. And I'm excited to see Kai Kara France get that shot because he's a very good fighter. He seems like a likable dude, and yeah, he might be, besides Ursig, the best striker in this division. So would
Yeah.
love to see him against Pantoja.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be. Yeah, he definitely it made something to look forward to,
Yeah,
because, and now the flyweight division is turning out to be again, like, very exciting and dynamic. We had some new guys coming in, new blood, like these Japanese fighters, and now we've got, Kai Kara France as well, who poses a very different fight game and a very different skill set. So I'm excited for it.
yeah, and it's like it seems so weird because it seems like the UFC keeps setting up the flyweight division to fail so that they have an excuse to cut it. And routinely there keeps being these moments where whether it was Cejudo beating Dillashaw or Figgy and Moreno having that amazing quadrilogy of fights,
Mhm.
or right, like Pantoja coming in and having like a heartfelt moment and like saying to his like deadbeat father, like, "Are you proud of me now?" Like the division just keeps itself alive when you think it's on its like last gasp.
Yeah.
And Kai Kara France does that with this, right? He might come in and beat Pantoja, and suddenly the UFC is very excited because they have a new, you know, Southern Hemisphere, Australia, New Zealand area fighter that they get a push as their champion.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was a short fight. I was, it was good to see Kai Kara France come in. Didn't seem like too much ring rust. But Steve Versig made a big error again.
Yeah.
Let's cover off on 2 other fights really fast. Tai Tuivasa, Jairzinho Rosenstruck. Any thoughts on it? Nope. Cool. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. The only 2 things I'll say is I don't know how that one judge gave it a 30-27 to Tuivasa. That guy should
Yeah.
never be
What the
allowed.
fuck?
He should not be allowed to judge again. That's he's from that I think Australia or New Zealand. Like that's it no, you shouldn't be allowed to judge again.
No,
Sorry, bro. Yeah.
yeah, no.
Yeah, you're donezo. And the other thing I would say is like it's this weird thing which I think we'll get to about when we talk about Dricus du Plessis and his amazing victory over Israel Adesanya, which is Tai Tuivasa seemed like he developed. We talked about mechanics, technique, and strategy the last time we talked, and Tai Tuivasa seemed like he was developing like a high level strategy. Hey, I'm going to be patient. I'm not going to brawl. I'm going to try to like counter. I'm trying to like lead. But he didn't have any techniques to back that up. What would be
Yeah.
one way to control distance? A jab. He never seemed to like. He didn't have a jab in his arsenal. So his strategy was maintain distance And it was like, well, what techniques do I have to actually implement that strategy? Well, I have an overhand right and I have a leg kick. That's not a range like keeping a technique. So giving a fighter who has very, very few techniques high level strategy that doesn't implement those isn't a good idea. You
Mhm.
have to like teach him the jab before he can maintain distance for a long period of time. And so yeah, it was a shit fight. Who cares? Neither one of these dudes are fighting for a title. But it just showed like there you can't jump immediately to high level strategy if you don't have the requisite technique and mechanics to back it up.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah. Li Jing Liang, the Leech versus Carlos Prates. Any thoughts on this fight?
Uh, Carlos Prates was definitely impressive, and he just beat the bejesus out
Yep.
of Li Jingliang. Like, oh god, like that was a nasty knockout too. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Any hesitation with the fact that it took him 4 knockdowns to put the Leech away in this division?
Um,
Compared to
hmm,
like Shavkat Rakhmonov, Sean Brady, Gilbert Burns, even Stephen Thompson, who's kind of washed, Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad, uh, talking about the ability to hurt someone, but then let them back into a fight when those fighters are not people you want to let back into a fight.
well, two questions to that. One, did Prates really let Li Jingliang back into the fight? I don't think so. It was more like it felt like to me he just didn't rush in to like finish it on the ground. It was more like I know I'm winning here, so like just you keep getting up and like I am way outclassing you here. So eventually it's going to go down this way. It's just a matter of like how long will it take? It wasn't one of those where he got the knockdown and then just swarmed and then couldn't put him away. It
Yeah.
was like knocked him down and kind of stood there and let him get back up and then like kept fighting and knocked him down again. It wasn't like
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess I would. The thing I think about so there were two things that went through my mind. One is Neil Magny in this division. Neil Magny routinely gets dropped in all of his fights, and then will
Mhm.
like fall into a clinch or get up and clinch, and people will think, "Oh, well, he's rocked," and then he routinely wins from that position. He will like get into a clinch, win in the clinch fight, and take people down and take their back, right?
Okay.
Because if you don't capitalize on a finish with him, he will come back and finish you. And then I also think of like Gilbert Burns, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Jack Della Maddalena. If you every minute you give these guys, even if they're hurt, a chance to continue fighting, is is a chance where they're going to just throw so much offense at you that you might wilt and fade and lose. And
Mhm.
so my slight hesitation was like, it was impressive. He's got a piston of a left hand. He's got a lot of accuracy. He's extremely long and lanky.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, if you routinely get people hurt and then you give them an extra minute to come back into the fight, especially at the high level at welterweight, you're just giving some of these killers a chance to rock you or a chance to get a takedown and fully recover.
Mhm.
Li Jingliang isn't that threat, but seeing the fact that it took him so long to finish him and he couldn't after the second or third knockdown go, okay, let me put the finishing moves on this guy, made me go, ooh, like you need to have that instinct and that ability to someone off. I do appreciate like what you're saying. Like you need a backup. Roy McDonald, Robbie Lawler were very good at that. But when somebody was legitimately hurt, both of them would pounce on it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I feel like if you don't have that ability, that's a big gap between like the top 5 in this division and everyone else. Um,
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also think like let's say he did pounce and wasn't able to finish. That would be saying something even more because the knockout that he got, like Li Jingliang was like out cold for like
yeah,
a long time. Like
yeah,
he was
yeah,
knocked out. And
yeah.
I think this is kind of like a reading of styles. If there is
Hmm.
someone, and I would have to see like how if Paredes gets in, if this becomes just something that he routinely does,
Hmm.
because I think in one of his fights he did kind of swarm on top of them, but also he's had a lot of knockouts where it's been like a one punch and the guy just
Yeah,
drops and it's almost like a walk off from there.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know, like it's almost having that reserve style where it's like, okay, like I'm not going to pounce into an area where I know I can get reversed or this is actually a strong suit for them. I
Mhm.
think actually like kind of smart for this division because like let's say he does do that against like Neil Magny or Shavkat Rakhmonov, like who they definitely have a grappling, advantage over him. That's literally like jumping into like the lion's den then and just trying to finish it off there.
Yeah. Which I would love to see. I'd love to see him against Neil Magny. I think that'd be a great fight next, just to
Mm,
see kind of because I think he would piece up Neil Magny, but I want to see what happens. Because the issue that a lot of young fighters have against Neil Magny is like they let him just hang around too long, and the longer
yeah.
you hang him around, like let him hang around, he often gets finishes on these guys. So I'd love to see that.
Mhm.
I also shout out to Carlos Prey against all modern medical science being a chain smoker, especially before he fights. Shouts to that dude. That dude
Is
is
he
about
actually?
it. Yeah, he is. He's from that old school Thai background where they like chain smoke before fights.
The
And
chain
I'm like,
smoking drink and everything?
yeah, fuck yeah, dude.
Fan.
Get in
That's
there.
sick.
Yeah, let the vices control you. Do all of it. But yeah, I mean, impressive. But I was like, ooh, like at least dude. I gotta say, the commentary on this whole fight card, and we'll get to it in the Izzy DDP fight, was atrocious, and
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I had to turn it off. They were so up certain fighters' assholes and like smelling their own farts. I couldn't take it. Uh, so I thought the commentary kind of overhyped him. I would love to see him against Neil Magny or like a Vicente Luque next to see if he can break into the top 15. But yeah, I mean, a good performance is what you should do to the Leech, but I was hoping he'd finish him a little bit faster.
Mhm.
All right, let's talk about these two actually interesting fights. Or
Alright.
actually, are there any other fights on this card that we need to talk about? I didn't watch any of the prelims.
Well, okay, there were some issues with the prelims. Did you see this is what I was texting you about earlier, the heavyweight fight in the prelims, Walker versus Tafa?
Oh yeah, yeah. There was an issue.
Well, like, okay, so Tafa technically didn't tap or say tap. He just, like, yelled out in pain.
Yeah, he screamed in pain, which means stop the fight.
Well, does it? Like, because he was, like, rolling out of it too,
All right.
so,
All right. Hold
like
on, everybody. Come close. Come close. Listen to me. Open your textbooks to the unified rules of MMA. If a fighter yells in pain when a submission is being applied, that is treated the same as a verbal tap. And
Is it actually?
a judge has the
Ah,
discretion to stop it. So,
okay,
according to the unified rules from what, 2016 or some shit, that's a tap. You
okay,
can't be if I get punched in the body and go, "Oh God, please stop," and a referee stops it, and then I go, "Well, I wasn't knocked out. What's going on? Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's what happens, man." No, I didn't see any. Okay, this is one of those things. I watched like 2 or 3 fights with the commentary on, and then I turned the volume to mute for the other fights because I couldn't take it. So I didn't see this fight with commentary. Uh,
okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because I was like, oh, I don't understand what the issue was with the ending. Because I saw you had texted me, like, we should talk about the ending. And I was like, yeah, it was like a really sloppy leg lock. Okay. And I don't, but okay. Yeah. No. He screamed. You can't yell out in pain. That's the rules,
Okay.
man. Keep
I
that
did
shit
not know
inside.
that that was part of the unified rules because I've definitely
Yeah.
seen people, like, take body shots and they'll, like, let out a yell and they'll try
hmm
to, like, try to grab on, or drop or something like that, so,
hmm
like,
No, you
I
can't. Especially for like a leg submission, right?
I know
Because
a heel hook is definitely like, "Hey, in, like, a matter of a split second, your ACL and everything is just, like, gone now," so, like, they are trying to protect the fighters, but
yeah.
yeah, but, 'cause I saw him, like, rolling out of it too, so I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay," like, yeah.
Nah. Nah. It was a shit fight. It was
Oh, it
garbage.
was very bad, but it was just like, "Huh,
Yeah.
that's an this, like"
Nah.
the ending is just like, "Okay." So
Don't yell out in pain. Keep that shit inside. Yeah, come on
uh,
now.
the only other one was I was exceptionally disappointed in Joshua, Culibao,
Okay.
because he was definitely winning that fight and then just decided, like, "Nah, I'm not gonna press anything. I'm not gonna do anything," and then fucking lost. Like
Oh,
like,
is this I didn't see this fight. Is this a good example of a very classic rule that we're gonna talk about where just doing more offense will win you a fight. Was this he just chose not to do enough offense?
No, he just chose to not like do the things that were working. Like there was
Mm.
a point where I think in the second round he could have possibly ended the fight, and then he was just like, "Well, there's only 12 seconds left, and I'm kind of tired." Like I was like, "What the fuck are you
Mm.
doing?" Like, like you have this guy, and like you can finish it here. Like the guy was definitely like stumbling and like leaning against the fence. Like it was just, I was just like in the featherweight division, which is one of the most competitive, most
Oh,
exciting, where you have to not just have skill and be dynamic, but also show that you can like you're a killer to
yeah.
not only like raise your stock, but also put a message out to everyone else.
Mhm.
Like you can't be having that. You can't have those like, displays of weaknesses there.
Yeah. Oh, wow, you sounded like Andrew Tate there, my man. Can't have a display of weakness, bro. No, but that's true. Also, another I've seen a lot of like talk recently because the Olympics just finished up about people being like MMA should be in the Olympics.
No,
No.
fuck no.
You have you ever watched regional MMA? It's bad. We don't want that shit in the Olympics. It's rough to watch. Yeah, and this is that kind of sounds like why because you see like in regional MMA. God, I went to a regional MMA show in Seattle, and like this one dude, like the first punch he got in the face, like that woman against was it Iman Khalif or whatever her name was in the Olympics? She's just like I don't want to get punched in the face anymore. I'm done. And this
Yeah.
dude got punched in the face and just like walked out of the cage, and I was like, what are you doing? You can't you can't just like leave. What are you talking about? Yeah, no, bummer. That sucks. Well, all right. Let's talk about the two fights that actually are worth talking about. We'll go quickly through the first one, and then we'll spend glorious time on the middleweight division. It's giving me good feelings in my loins. But let's talk
How?
about
How?
fucking Dan. Let's first talk about Dan Hooker, though,
Yeah,
dude.
holy shit.
Did you see the in between rounds? The second and third round, he goes, "I love this shit, boys," and I was like, "This guy is bout it, bout it. This guy is what a champion." I thought I had predicted that this fight would look like Johnny Hendricks versus Carlos Condit, and I
Yeah.
feel slightly vindicated in that because this was as if Johnny Hendricks came out with the game plan of not grappling Carlos Condit. Um,
Yeah.
and dude, props to Dan Hooker. His first line takedown defense was so much better than we've seen. I
Yeah.
just think
Yeah.
Gamrot came out and was like, I'm gonna try to punch with him and then try to take him down. And that's a bad idea against Dan Hooker, dude. He's willing to throw down, and they both dropped each other in the first round. I think live I scored the fight 2-1 for Gamrot, but I have no issue with Hooker winning this fight. It was a blood and guts affair, and Dan Hooker, every time Gamrot would gain an advantage or like start to like piece him up in any way, Dan Hooker just is always like, I'm willing to go a little bit deeper into this muck with you. And
Yeah.
Gamrot did not seem willing to do that. And god damn, dude, Dan Hooker is an animal, and it was a pleasure to watch this fight.
Yeah. Yeah. It really did feel like Dan Hooker was fighting with his like his back against the wall, and he was like a starving animal, just like doing
Yeah.
anything he could to get out. And like he looked great. Like he looked
Yes.
better than he's looked in a lot of fights, and not just because of like the technique and the neutralizing, but just like the aggression and the type of like shots he was picking. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm hyped for him again. I was hyped for him
Yeah.
before, and it was kind of like we were saying, like he was kind of like, oh, is he on the tail end of this? Like, can he bang with like the higher, like the higher up lightweights? And we said like, yeah, he is one of the, he needs to get his dues for being an action fighter, but he just doesn't quite have that same level as someone like Charles Oliveira or Justin Gaethje or any one of them. But like, maybe he still doesn't have that same like dynamics as them. But like, props to his like just his spirit, and just like I'm like, you're gonna have to basically kill me to get me out of this cage right now. Like
Ab-
I was
oh,
super inspired by this fight.
oh, dude, I'm so glad you mentioned those two fighters, and I want to throw Dustin Poirier in there, right?
Yeah, of
Justin
course.
Gaethje in his last fight against Max Holloway, we lauded Max Holloway. Justin Gaethje got a broken nose and a broken hand in that fight, and he fought to the very end. Justin Poirier, broken rib, broken nose, very end. Like these dudes just, no matter what, are willing to go through the trenches in these fights. And Dan Hooker is one of those guys. And so I gotta ask, he was number 11 coming into this fight. Gamrot was number 5.
Wow.
So Dan Hooker is going to take the number 5 spot. Who do you give him? Because the only people above him are Arman Tsarukyan, not including the champion, Arman Tsarukyan, Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira, and Justin Gaethje.
Yeah,
Like,
Jesus.
what a buffet of matchups for Dan Hooker.
Like,
all of those fights would be phenomenal.
Yeah. But goddamn, like,
Yeah, I know it'd be rough for all of them, but I know Max Holloway has the BMF belt, but Dan Hooker called for it after the end. He said, like, give me the BMF, give me a title shot, give me Conor McGregor. Like, I want them all. I think Charles Oliveira versus Dan Hooker for the BMF, we don't need to treat like a linear title. We just bestow it on certain fights. And I think Dan Hooker versus Charles Oliveira fits that bill. And I think that should be a main event somewhere.
That would be pretty. Ooh, that would be a lot of fireworks there.
Yeah, what a great fucking fight, man. And like you said, like, I thought Dan Hooker was on the tail end, and then he comes in against what had previously been his kryptonite, like heavy top game wrestlers.
Yeah,
and he shut it down and came out with a blood and guts victory. And I'm like, let's give him this number 2 contender. Let's give him Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira needs a fight, and that can be the number 1 contender fight after Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev have their fight. Yeah, is phenomenal. What a great fight. Ugh, loved it.
It was great. It was very inspiring, and I'm back on the Dan Hooker train. You know,
yeah,
like,
man.
I'm hopeful for him, but man, the lightweight division is so tough. It's so like,
yeah,
God, but yeah, I'm excited for him again. It'll be good.
Yeah, especially with Islam Makhachev at the top. But we still have Dustin Poirier, we still have Justin Gaethje, we still have Charles Oliveira, we have Dan Hooker, we have Michael Chandler. Conor McGregor will never fight again, but his name will keep being put out there. Like, we have such a great crop of action fighters. Let's keep getting them fights. It's like, I don't even give a shit who they fight. Bring in Donkerson off the street. Get a guy behind the deli counter to come in. I want to see him. Like, let's just feed things. Like Christians to the lions in the Roman Colosseum. Let's just feed them to Dan Hooker. I want to see it. It would be phenomenal because he's a true gunslinger and a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Let's talk about it, my man. Israel Adesanya is finished by Dricus Du Plessis. I've got a lot of thoughts on this fight, but I want to hear, what are your big takeaways? I guess, like, if you had 2 or 3 big lessons from this fight, what did you learn? What did this fight mean to you? Let's hear it.
Okay, so couple main things for me. One, where does Izzy go from here? You know, and what is going to happen? You know, like, I don't home. Okay, but like,
he has made enough money, and I think. Have you seen his interviews after the fight?
No, I did not watch the post-fight conference or anything.
So he's posted on his own YouTube video. He was very proud of his performance. Like, he said he felt very content with how he performed. It wasn't, and it seemed to me the way he was talking, this fight was more about washing the bad taste out of his mouth of the poor performance against Sean Strickland. Because this Izzy would have beaten Sean Strickland, it seems to me, pretty easily. Yeah. And this fight seemed to be more about that than anything else to him. And so despite the loss, he seems very content and, like, not bothered too much by the fact that he lost.
Yeah. And on the one hand, that seems that's like a mature, like, and one of the big things that Israel Adesanya has always been criticized for is being, like, kind of immature and being just kind of like, you know, maybe not a good sport about winning or losses or whatever there, you know? So, like, on the one hand, it's like, okay, you can see some maturity on that. But on the other hand, it's like, is this now him saying, like, I've done what I wanted to do now? Like, I'm content with what I've achieved, what I've developed. I'm happy. Like, is that where he goes now? Or does he have to reevaluate or what he wants to do in the fight game. Because he's like he's been fighting a decent amount of time. Because before his whole UFC and MMA career, he had a like full kickboxing career as well. So
yeah, like like over 100 professional combat sports bouts.
Yeah, so it's like he doesn't really have anything else to prove,
Yeah.
But it's more about like his own personal desire. And he was even saying before this, like he doesn't know how much longer he's gonna fight.
Yeah.
But the actual fight itself, there are a couple things.
Well, hold on. Let's touch on that real fast about the because I think you made a good point about like it's a mature thing that he said, and I really want to highlight that. We often say like, well, that's a mature thing to say, and that feels almost kind of like a bless their heart, they're being mature, kind of like but like a lot of these fighters hold a lot of like a lot of mental baggage and like a lot of like deep personal issues inside of
Oh
them.
yeah.
And it really does feel like I think especially with that Pereira knockout and kind of like vanquishing that foe, it feels like he kind of has like not moved beyond fighting and like, I don't need it anymore, I'm better than it, but just like he doesn't have that. Like, remember when I went back and watched that Kevin Gastelum fight because I remember him getting in worse trouble and hurt more in that Kevin Gastelum fight than the Dricus Du Plessis fight. And that was the one where he like lifted his leg and pretended to like pee on the cage. And he's like, I'm a dog, I'm marking my territory. Like he had a fire and an anger inside of him that was like, I'm not giving anyone a fucking inch. And this fight, it seemed like he was like, I'm not that person anymore. Not in a bad way, but like I don't actually need that to be happy in myself. And so I think him moving beyond that is like a very not only mature, but like it shows that he's like probably a happier and more complete human being. That he's like, well, all right, whatever. Like, I did what I wanted to do. So like I am very pleased with him. Like I'm pleased to see an athlete reach that point rather than feel this like, Michael Jordan, we all watched The Last Dance. He's a fucking psychopath, right? That's not like a 100% emotionally healthy human being, right? Like, and it looks like Izzy has become an emotionally healthy human being. I mean, despite all of his weird like Hitler tweets and all that other bullshit, but like, right when it comes to like fighting, it doesn't seem like he needs that as much, or he doesn't have that Michael Jordan psychopathic drive.
And given all the like surroundings of this fight, like when there was definitely bad blood between the two of them with the whole like, who's the real African champion, who's the real like African like representative, and like all racial
Francis
undertones
Ngannou.
aside, yes.
Let's not delete Francis Ngannou. Come on now.
Well, that's what even Izzy said, he was saying like, he was like very critical of the UFC for almost like deleting him from like the record books or whatever, or from the discussion of the heavyweights. And, and I do think like if Izzy had won the fight, would he have been as graceful in victory as he would have been in defeat? And I don't know, because he has shown that he's not, but like, in terms of like from a personal standpoint, like, yes, I am happy that he has shown this kind of growth and maturity, like we were talking about, even though he is one of my favorite fighters and I did really want him to win.
Yeah.
But in terms of like an actual maturing ambassador of the sport individual, like this was like a good ending to it, I guess. And if he decides to retire, good for him. He's done everything that you could ever imagine, a middleweight fighter doing. I know he has accomplished the things that he really wanted. So I don't know. It's just going to come down to like, what does he want his legacy to be?
Yeah.
But with the actual fight itself,
lay it on me.
So the beginning of the fight, I had two thoughts initially. And one, the way he was fighting and the way that Dricus Du Plessis just like meanders forward and lunges in, I thought like, I actually thought that Dricus Du Plessis was going to catch Adesanya with a front left head kick, because he kept that right hand was so low and he was like just out of range, and he would only just bring it up to block. But because like DDP just has that weird rhythm and like movement to him, I thought he was going to catch him with the high kick, and he threw it one time. I was like, but luckily Izzy like moved back away and pulled his hand up. But look, that was the side that Dricus did actually ended up landing eventually.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. That left leg that left just leg of Dricus du Plessis is the best part of his body. It's the fastest, it's the most mechanically sound. He chambers his kicks properly, finishes them, and he can throw them to leg, body, and head.
Yeah.
Every other part of his body is jank. It's like, like Achilles, the only weak part of his body was like his heel. Like Dricus, he only got dipped into that fluid in his left leg, and then the rest of his body was all fucked up. But I was astounded. His left leg is phenomenal. We have to put some respect on that left leg, man. It's
Yeah.
it's fast and it looks like it lands fucking heavy when he hits with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all throughout the fight, okay, so part of our bet was who would win that first round.
Yeah.
And who did you have winning? Like all of our bets aside, because the two of them referees scored it for Adesanya, and one of them scored it for DDP. But who did you have it for?
I had it slightly. It was the most competitive round I think there was in the fight. I had it slightly for Adesanya. It's one of those weird things because I thought like one of the things that I think is challenging with Adesanya is he has a tendency to overreact when taking punches. When he tries to roll with punches, it makes it look like he got hit really hard because he really like whips his head to try to like take the sting off the punch. But it looked like he was landing the more thudding punches and more consistent strikes in the first round. It
Okay.
is a very close round. I could see it going either way because it felt like when Dricus was landing, it was a lot of Izzy like pre-reacting and like leaning back with the punches. So
Okay.
I gave it to Izzy, but if you gave it to Dricus, like I would say kind of like no harm, no foul.
Yeah, I gave it to Dricus because I thought the trading of the shots were pretty even,
Mhm.
like in terms of not just volume, but also like impact and damage. Like I didn't think any one of them did significantly more damage to the other, but because DDP was kind of controlling the pace and the like where the engagements were happening, like he was taking the center more, that's like
Mhm.
what pushed it over to me there. And I think he had
Mhm.
like one instance where he like did he in the first round like kind of take Izzy down, but like not really. Like he didn't establish much control, but he did like
Yeah.
get him down against the fence there.
Well, it was one of those crazy things too, where it looked like Dricus like tripped and fell into the takedown, which I don't think he actually tripped and fell. His technique is just so janky. It looks like he trips and falls into the takedown, but it's effective, right? Yeah.
I'm glad you say that because so in the first round I gave it to Dricus,
Mhm.
and then the second and third round I gave to Adesanya, and actually the fourth I was
Whoa,
giving to
whoa, whoa,
him.
hold on. The
No, no,
second
no.
round?
Was the second round the one that he actually took him down and like held him
Yeah,
down for
yeah,
a decent?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
no, that one's yeah, yeah. So, but there's something that happened in the third round, and I couldn't tell what was happening. I don't know if DP clipped Adesanya and kind of wobbled him there, but it looked like Izzy was on like his legs weren't functioning properly. Like he kept slipping around. He kept like he didn't seem to have as fluid and steady footwork that he normally did. And I remember
Mhm.
saying out loud in the third round, like something's wrong with Izzy. What's going on? And
Mhm.
I couldn't tell if it was an actual strike that maybe wobbled a little bit and that DDP didn't really seize upon, or if like maybe he like injured his leg or something, or like the leg
Mhm.
kicks were affecting him a lot more, or something. It looked like there was just not that same spring in his step, and that was like that kind of spelled the downfall after that.
Interesting. I didn't quite see it that way. I think in the third round, the third round I thought was very good for Izzy.
It
Um,
was, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think what we're seeing is Izzy's getting older, right? He's 35. He's not as fleet of foot. He's not as fast or as fluid as he was the Kevin Gastelum, the first Robert Whitaker fight, the Paulo
Mhm.
Costa fight, right? He's just getting older and slower. He has a lot of miles on him, and so I think I mean, the pace of these first two rounds,
Yeah.
those two rounds were some of Izzy's 5 round fights didn't have as much of a pace over 5 rounds as those 2 rounds had, right? Like Dricus really knew that you got to push that pace and you really got to flow on that.
Mhm.
So I thought he did a great job with that. It's Yeah, that's what I'd say about the third round. Is like it was a slow. He just is a little bit slower of foot. I didn't see anything because I thought that was the round where Izzy actually started throwing combinations, which was something that had touched on when we were talking about Izzy versus Duplessis, which was Izzy doesn't throw combinations. He throws one strikes, and that for the
Yeah.
first two rounds was really getting him in trouble because Duplessis, even though he would throw the jankiest 4-punch combination, Israel could only move out of the way of the first 2 or 3 punches, so inevitably he would get hit by the 4th punch. And
Mhm.
Izzy would throw one strike, and Duplessis would either block it because he's very good at keeping that high guard, kind of like Nate Diaz had against Conor McGregor, and just absorbing the punishment. Because so we have to say this: Dricus Duplessis is a hoss. This guy can eat an ungodly amount of punishment and not
Yeah.
get tired. He is indefatigable when he goes forward. He is like, I don't give a shit how much I miss, how much I get hit. I'm just gonna keep going forward and just pouring on offense. And
And he
that's
got hit with a lot of body shots too,
yeah.
like ripping body shots.
And he was breathing out of his mouth, tired, and it's one of those things where he just this was the analogy I was going to make about Dricus Duplessis before we dive into more of the analysis. And again, I mentioned off the top, be a weird. People are going to take this as a weird like race fucking thing because people in like European history are really weird white supremacists. But if you ever play any of the Total War games or any wargaming games, and you play the Viking class or the Viking group, right? You get big stat drops to your defense, to your strategy, to your overall like logistics, right? But you get a boost in like you have a berserker fury. They don't stop even when there is massive casualties on their end. They don't stop even when there are overwhelming odds, right? They don't break rank, right? The Romans will, if you play like Romans in a battle game, they will consistently hold rank, but if their ranks break, they scatter and they leave because it relies on them like having good morale. Vikings will just keep fighting to the end. Dricus Duplessis is kind of like picking the Viking class in a real-time strategy game. He just is like, I don't give a shit. I have no defense. I'm just going to keep, and nothing you do can deter me. And so, therefore, I'm just going to keep pouring on this offense until you make a mistake and it deters you. And that's what it really felt like watching this fight. Because
Mm.
Izzy was landing hard body shots. Izzy was hitting him to the head. Izzy was doing so much. And Dricus just was like, okay, whatever. I'm just going to keep pouring on offense. That head
Yeah.
kick didn't work. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to, right? Normally, if I threw a head kick and I missed 2 times, I'd be embarrassed and be like, I'm going to stop throwing the left head kick. He just kept fucking throwing it. And so
Yeah.
Izzy always had to think about it. He kept throwing kicks to the leg. He kept just like constantly doing those charging punches, even when he would miss, he would land 0 of 16 punches. And then his 17th punch he'd land. He'd be like, great, I'll throw another 17 and land only 1. Right? He just kept going. And it seemed to kind of wear Izzy out mentally. Yeah, that was like my biggest takeaway was just like watching Dricus do that. And I think so much of that relies on him being an athletic freak, right? This style or this like mode of fighting would not work for anyone else. You have to just be an absolute unit to do this. And that's what
Yeah,
Dricus is.
but it was like it's like an athleticism that you don't. His athleticism is just his ability to like have an insane endurance, both like in terms of just like doing stuff, but also absorbing damage, like you said earlier. It's not the athleticism that you would normally think like with Izzy or
Yeah.
another like, just athlete. It's
Yeah.
literally just like a workhorse, that's like
Yeah.
no matter what you throw at me, I'm going to keep coming forward.
Yeah.
And that is especially against someone who is a counter fighter or a counter puncher when it's like, I've got you open. I'm going to land this shot that should like slow you down or put you down on the canvas and it doesn't happen. That can also be very like mentally and emotionally taxing on the counter fighter. It's like,
Yeah.
I hit you with my best shot and nothing's happening. Like, what the hell do I do now?
Yeah, and that's kind of what it felt like. And I have to say, like, beyond being a workhorse, because being a workhorse makes it feel like Dricus Duplessis is dumb. His high-level strategy, kind of like what we said about Tuivasa. Tuivasa has 5 techniques, and so when you give him a very complex high-level strategy, he can't implement it because he only has 5 techniques to work with, right? Like, establish range. How am I going to do that when I only have, like, shovel hooks and leg kicks? That's not a way to establish range. Dricus Duplessis does have a wide array of techniques. He doesn't always implement them well. He doesn't always have the right mechanics for them, but he has a wide range of them, right? And he just will throw them. He'll just cycle through 100 different techniques just in a row and just be like, whatever, I'll just keep going in a circle with these 100 techniques. And it doesn't matter like what you do because I'm just going to keep doing this. And by piling up that offense, it really wears out opponents.
Yeah.
And he said after the fact that like for the first 2 minutes of every round, he had to be really defensively responsible, keep his hands up. And he did keep his hands up. I will say that. Like he doesn't have like the smartest defense, but he knows how to like put his forearms in front of his face and just like make sure he only gets hit on the top of the head, right? He said like I have to do that for the first 2 minutes, and then Izzy will slightly slow down, and then I have to be the first to initiate. I have to be first. And so at the 2 minute mark, his round would yell out, okay, 2 minutes. And then for the next 3 minutes, just to win the majority of the round, he would try to initiate every engagement they had. And that's like from a very like basic, simple, stupid game plan, that's exactly the right thing to do. And it's so hard to do that, but he has workhorse donkey brains, and he's like, great, I can do it no matter how many punches I take, no matter how many kicks I take, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of an exciting time in the middleweight division because a lot of people were comparing him to Paulo Costa. I even made the analysis that like he might be kind of like Paulo Costa, right? This just big, brutish pressure fighter going forward. But what really struck me is he's much more like, I remember Israel Adesanya and Luke Rockhold and Robert Whittaker saying about fighting Yoel Romero that kicking him is like kicking a steel bar. Like he is this metal golem of a creature who just like doesn't seem to ever get hurt. And anytime he hits you, it's like getting hit by like a ton of concrete. But Yoel Romero, much like a golem, has no brain. This Dricus du Plessis is the Tin Man if he got to get a brain at the very end of The Wizard of Oz, right? Like he has high-level strategy, and he's just a fucking indestructible thing that moves downhill on you. He's not the slickest. He doesn't have the best mechanics. He should be easily counterable, but at 185 pounds, there's not enough skill in the division to counter just a Tin Man with a brain, this iron golem coming at you with a brain. Yoel Romero was the prototype. He just had no smarts about how to fight and win rounds. But Dricus du Plessis does have that. And so I'm kind of excited to see this middleweight division where it's like, okay, who's going to be the first person who just is able to like string enough? It's like a Dark Souls boss or like, like a really tough video game boss. Like who's just going to string enough dodges and parries and attacks together in the right order to beat this guy? Because it's almost just like a math problem. It's just a really fucking long math problem. And most people just kind of gas out or mentally lose out when they fight him. I was impressed by Israel Adesanya, like infinitely impressed by Dricus du Plessis. It was, again, I was watching it and I was like, this technique sucks ass. These mechanics are terrible. But the more the fight went on, I was like, but he's got the right idea. He's got the right broad strokes idea, and he just happens to be such a fucking powerhouse that if he can just stick to the game, he might be able to win it. And lo and behold, it happened. It was impressive to watch and frustrating to watch at the same time. Right? Because it made me go like, well, I guess there's no point in ever getting good at anything because there's just going to be a Dricus du Plessis in every field. It reminded me a lot of have you ever seen the movie Amadeus?
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like Israel Adesanya is Salieri, right?
You're saying DDP is Mozart. Amadeus?
Yeah. Goon who just comes in and is like, I got this. It's perfect. No need for me to practice. I can just dick around. And Israel Adesanya is like Salieri, just being like, God damn it, I've given everything to this. And same with Robert Whittaker. I've given everything to this and the improvement of my skills and working to become better and mentally resilient. And Dricus du Plessis is just giggling over in the corner, being like, whatever, I'm big. And that's God. And if that isn't the encapsulation of the middleweight division, I don't know what is, man.
can't believe you just made that fucking comparison.
It's yeah, I think it's yeah, I think it's right. I think I'm right. Yeah, man. It was a it was a pretty astonishing fight to watch. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I thought I mean, I think a lot of things that we also pointed out, right? Like you said, if someone could kick with Israel Adesanya, and especially leg kick with Israel Adesanya, DDP did that, right?
Yeah.
Half his kicks didn't hit or were checked, but he just kept fucking throwing them, right? He's just like, I don't care. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna keep doing it. He didn't rip to the body as much as Izzy did, but he went to the body as well. He was opportunistic with his takedowns. I think that's the thing, is like he's one of those guys, kind of like Shavkat Rakhmonov or a lot of these guys at welterweight or even below, right? Where we always say, like, if you just let them hang around long enough, they're more likely to find an opening than you are. And that's
Mhm.
kind of what DDP is. It's just like, if you just let this dude hang around, eventually he's gonna nuke you, right?
Yeah.
He's got a 50 caliber handgun, right? He's got a Desert Eagle with one round in it, and he just needs to line up the shot. He's a terrible shot. He's cross-eyed and half blind in one eye, but like you just give him enough time, he'll line up that shot and end you. Um, yeah, and that's what this fight kind of felt like. Overall, it was yeah. Good. I thought it was I gotta say, I had talked about at the like our mid-year review that the January event that was headlined by Strickland and DDP was like one of the worst events I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
And it was a terrible fight. This was a very good fight. I was very entertained the whole time. It was a very engaging fight. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It was good, and it does mark like. And here's the thing. This is what I was messaging you about before. I had this horrible, like my initial emotional reaction to this is I have a horrible vision of the future. Kind of like what you were saying before of like, because we have a lot of great fights coming up for the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is how this shit is going down, I'm like so nervous for like everything that's coming in the future here. Like,
Yeah. I think we're having a big I think for a couple of divisions, we're gonna have a big, especially by the beginning of 2025, a big card.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
it, like it's a weird thing because DDP in a I was trying to think of like an analogy for like what DDP has done because right, he has finished Robert Whitaker, finished Israel Adesanya. In the past 10 years, the two best middleweights of all time, and then beaten the only other champion, Sean Strickland, in that time as well. That would be the equivalent of someone coming through and beating Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski, and like Yair Rodriguez in a row.
Are
And
you
there is
are you
a
saying DDP is the middleweight version of Ilya Topuria?
you know, it's so weird because Ilya Taporia has the skill and is so phenomenal that I'm like, it makes sense that he's doing it, and I'm excited to see that like this is an Ilya Taporia is the evolution of the game at featherweight, right? He's not only defeating the kings of that division, he is elevating what it means to be a king in that division. DDP doesn't feel like he's doing that. He
No.
feels in a weird middleweight, like, and I'm gonna use another medieval like analogy. He's like there were Roman emperors, and then there was Charlemagne afterwards, right? Where it was like the Roman Empire fell apart, and Charlemagne's like, I'm just gonna be a thug and conquer all these little tiny fiefdoms left over from the Roman Empire. That's what DDP feels like, right? It's like this weird, like it's like a devolution, but you're also like, but he's known as Charlemagne the Conqueror, Charlemagne the Great. Like he did it, you know? Like that's what DDP feels like. But what a weird thing, right? Like I can't think of another division that had two people ruling it for so long that then were both dispatched by the same person.
Mm.
And no one else, right? Robert Whitaker only lost to Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya only lost to Alex Pereira, who then moved up. So it's like, but these were the two guys at middleweight for the longest time, and DDP came through. And it wasn't like either one of them have looked in their recent fights like washed versions of themselves. They still look like very good versions of themselves, and he beat them both. And I think Ilya Taporia will do that to Max Holloway. I think we're going to have kind of this turnover. John Josipe is leaving. We already have Tom Aspinall. Alex Pereira, we'll get to his fight announcement, but like, there's going to be a turnover, man. And
I know.
it's good for the sport, right? Like, It's healthy to have kind of the old brush of the forest be burned away by a forest fire. Yeah. But dude, like, I mean, props to Izzy coming back. I think again, I think like he should just sail off into the sunset. I think he probably should have retired after that Alex Pereira fight. He like exercised so many demons and knocking that guy out, and then just like there's no need for him to really do anything else. Just go. I mean, but here's the thing: he could go up to light heavyweight, beat Yuri Prochazka, which I think he would easily beat Yuri Prochazka, and then fight for the title, and he might win the 205 title.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's like go you're 35, you've made a shitload of money, go sail off into the sunset, be happy. DDP is gonna be this guy for a little bit. It is another thing where I think like the second his chin or his athleticism starts to wane, the whole thing breaks down. Right?
Yeah.
The whole thing breaks down. So I don't know if he'll be here for a long time. But middleweight's a weird fucky division, man. Like there's only like
Really
two or three
fucking
guys.
is.
Yeah, there's only like 2 or 3 guys that I think could beat him, and it's probably Robert Whitaker, who already lost to him, Sean Strickland, who already lost him, maybe Khamzat Chimaev. But again, we've talked about Khamzat Chimaev. If you can get to the second round with him, really struggling, DDP seems like he can go to the second round with fucking anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a weird division, man. But I'm excited for it now, right? Like it's like we had it reminds me kind of like the Anderson Silva like turnover, right? And then like Chris Weidman beat him twice, and it was like, hey, we're kind of in this new era now. It's not just watching people flail against Anderson Silva, and that's kind of what it, it's a new thing that we get to watch and see. And now it's people flailing against a totally different puzzle, right?
Yeah.
It's not like how can we outsmart Izzy? It's like how the fuck do we solve this granite like denser than diamond Rubik's cube of Dricus du Plessis, you know? Actually, Rubik's cube is too like complicated. This is he's denser than like a dying star, but it's Connect 4, right? It's a very simple game, but it's like the hardest material on earth. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly as you said. Like, the thing is, like, the way the DDP fights, it's only sustainable for so long. Like, once he does hit that point where his endurance, his durability starts to wane, because that is what he relies on. Like, it's going to be like you said, a sudden and quick crash.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, there's not that many fighters out there right now in the middleweight division. I don't know if they just have to wait out their time right now, because like look at these rankings, like I don't know, and Robert Whitaker still has to survive his rematch or rescheduling of his match with Khamzat Chimaev before he can maybe challenge again. Sean Strickland said he was going to be given the next title shot, and possibly like and DDP was also promised a fight now in South Africa if he won. So a DDP South Africa fight against Sean Strickland has a lot of also racial undertones that I'm like on the one hand excited for, but also like, oh, what the fuck is gonna happen? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, the middleweight division is like very. It's interesting right now in that we've got this weird puzzle at the top that has kind of overcome all the other scary fighters that were there. But I also don't know who's actually going to rise up to challenge this now, because I thought it was going to be Izzy. I thought he was the one to do it, and I don't see anyone else having the skill set to really, really dethrone him, unless, and this is what was tweeted out over the weekend, Alex Pereira comes back to 185. I don't think he will. But also, DDP said, hey, I'll come up to 205.
Yeah.
Which I think is a bad move on DDP's part. Like,
oh man, he's been beating all of our favorite fighters. So he beat Rob Whitaker, beat Israel Adesanya. What happens if he beats Alex Pereira? What are you gonna do?
I'll walk off into the ocean, like I said I would. But like, that's the thing. DDP relies on being durable. And we've talked about many times how Alex Pereira has the explosive knockout power to destroy everyone. I don't know if he can still do it at 185. I don't. down to 185 anymore because he cuts a lot to get to 205, and to cut an additional 20 pounds, like his durability, his endurance, his punching power will probably fade from that. So I think Alex Pereira would have the biggest chance to beat DDP at 205, but he's also then not fighting for 2 belts. So, you know, like, and if DDP goes up to fight 205 and loses, it's not like it's kind of like the same as Izzy going up to fight to try to become a double champion. So it's like no harm on anyone, but at the same time, like, I don't know. So I don't know if that fight will happen, especially since Alex Pereira is being called in for a 4th time to save basically another card. And it's against Khalil Roundtree. Like, holy
buddy.
shit.
Yeah, let's get Khalil in there.
That is. So I know we're getting away from 305 now, but this fight that was announced this weekend, oh shit. I'm so hyped for it.
I love it. And listen, everyone is fucking being like, what about Ankalaev? Ankalaev is fighting in the pay-per-view, like at the end of that month. Why isn't he fighting on the pay-per-view in Salt Lake City? It sounds like Ankalaev probably could fight in the United States, but they love having him on the Middle Eastern card. Also, Ankalaev has been given a chance to fight for the title, and he drew against Jan Blachowicz. And it sounds like the UFC is really pissed at him for that. He's also had like multiple no contests or DQs for making dumb donkey brain decisions. And it sounds like the UFC is upset about that. So you know what? Shut up. We're going to get Khalil Roundtree in there. We love Khalil. And you know what? Listen, we know what's going to happen if Ankalaev fights Alex Pereira. It might become a really boring wrestling fight. And we have Alex Pereira for a short period of time. Let's put him in the most exciting kickboxing fights we can get. And you know who's the most exciting kickboxer other than Alex Pereira in that division? It's Khalil motherfucking Roundtree. Yeah, let's get him in there. Let's have this fight. It's going to be an elevation, which I hate. Why are you putting any fight above 145 pounds at elevation? You stupid, stupid motherfuckers. But this is fantastic. I love this fight. I want to see it. It's going to be fantastic. Dude. It saves this card. Great. Yeah. Yes, great.
But someone is going to fucking die in this match. Like, oh my God.
2 rounds only. I love it. We know exactly what it's going to be. I know by 9:30, the fights are going to be over. It's going to be so good, right? Because especially the fight before it, Raquel Pennington, Juliana Pena. Shouts out to Rocky Pennington. She absolutely won the title. She like put in her dues. She stuck it out, and she was a better fighter than most everyone in this division for like nearly a decade. But she's not very good, and neither is Juliana Pena. This fight's gonna suck ass, and then we get a banger. It's gonna be like you just have to listen to like a boring church sermon, and then a bunch of fucking fireworks are gonna go off. It's gonna be so cool. I love it. I love it. It's great. It's great. Yeah. So no, I don't think DDP is gonna fight that. Dana White has already said they want Sean Strickland to fight the winner of Izzy versus DDP because they both have history. So it's probably going to be Sean Strickland next. That fight sucked when it initially happened. But seeing this DDP, he's even better than he was against Sean Strickland. I think maybe he'll finish Sean Strickland. Or if Khamzat Chimaev / Robert Whittaker finishes one another in an impressive fashion, we get that. Because I think really Robert Whittaker or Khamzat Chimaev is really the only chance right now at middleweight to beat DDP, barring any sort of catastrophic like fall off in his athleticism. Yeah, man. It's exciting times. No, the Alex Pereira fight is great. I'm so pumped for that.
Yeah.
Look, we have to give the last shout out though. Last shout out before we do this. Like DDP, we've trashed him endlessly on this podcast, and
we have.
We've talked about like would he be the worst fighter to ever like have the best resume? And I think technique wise and mechanics wise, he might be. But there's been no other middleweight champion who's beaten 3 middleweight champions in the past.
That's true.
He is the only one to do it. This would be as if somebody came through and dethroned Luke Rockhold, beat Chris Weidman, and then beat Anderson Silva straight in a row. He beat Robert Whittaker by KO, then Sean Strickland, then submitted Israel Adesanya. Like, this guy's legit. He's real. He's the jankiest motherfucker on earth. But above 170, man, like, that's what happens. That's middleweight, baby. And like, we're so disappointed with that. But then also, we're praising and so excited about Alex Pereira's fight when Alex Pereira really only has a left hand and low kicks. Like, it's kind of when we're talking about the big boy divisions, they don't got a lot of stuff going on. 307, though, very good. 305, it ended up being a good card. Much better than 304, I think.
Yeah.
So, anything else about this card or the upcoming 307 card you want to talk about?
No, it's interesting. This card set up a lot of future storylines, and for
Yeah.
better or for worse, like some things are going to be, like you said, a burning of the old so that the new can rise up,
Yeah.
and some of it is showing like, hey, some of these guys they still got a little fire in them with like Dan Hooker and Kai Kara France. So
Yeah, man.
yeah, it is moving the UFC, the divisions, the sport forward. Maybe not in the way that I wanted, but it is moving forward.
Yeah, you love your technique, guys.
I do. I
You
really,
have to
really do.
you have to accept. I've had to accept too. Like technique is dumb. Being smart is dumb. Learning things is dumb. Just be big. That's the lesson life routinely teaches me. Just be big. Just be a big man.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's true, man. Like,
Yeah, kind of,
yeah. Oh,
unfortunately.
dude, and also, did you see the people in Dricus Duplessis' corner?
No, I didn't really pay attention to that.
Oh my god. Okay, I gotta send you. I gotta see if I can pull this up. He's got some of these South African rugby players in his corner. Dude, there is one guy in his corner who makes Dricus Duplessis look like me. Like just a tiny little white dude. Like he is a monster. I don't know where they are like growing these dudes, but god damn.
Oh, I did see that one guy walk into the cage with him afterwards. Yeah. He is
Yeah,
like towering over everyone.
yeah, he's an absolute giant. Let me see if I can find this guy. I don't even know what to search. DDP Big Corner Man? Yeah, he's from the South African rugby team, and he is an absolute giant. I'll find it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, he I think he's like 6'9" or 6'10" and like 330. Just a
Jesus.
huge man. Like imagine seeing that dude running at you. I'd be like, "Oh my god, get out of the way." Yeah, yeah. They breed him big down in South Africa. It's a weird place. Yeah, 307 looks good too. I mean we've got 306 to look forward to. We've got UFC. I'm not gonna call it UFC No Chase, just UFC 306. Yeah, man, middleweight. It's moving, and we have a middleweight fight coming up this weekend with Kai Bahalio versus Jared Cannonier, and so it might be another turning of the old guard. We had talked about Israel
Yeah.
Adesanya, Robert Whitaker, and then third probably in that kind of what we have to now call the old generation of middleweight, right? Like the pre 2020 or the 2020 and plus, like older
Mhm.
generation middleweight of being Israel, Robert, and Jared Cannonier, right? Because now we're in this weird new generation with TDP and Strong Strickland. But it might be another passing of the torch with Kai Bahalio. There's no other good fight on that card, so we won't talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have to talk about one other thing. Did you watch any of CJI this weekend?
Oh no, I didn't. I heard about it after the fact that it happened.
Yes. Do you know what it is?
Isn't it a grappling tournament? Like a
Yes.
big
Yeah.
like where there's like a lot of money involved with it too?
Yeah. So apparently, ADCC, right?
Yeah.
The most prestigious grappling organization. Apparently, you get no money if you compete in the ADCC, despite it being like the best, thing. It's like the Olympics for no-gi submission grappling. You win $10,000 if you were the grand prize winner. Craig Jones, who's he's Alexander Volkanovski's grappling coach, a very good no submission or not no submission, no gi submission grappler. He decided to put on a tournament in which you win $1 million in the two divisions if you win, and every competitor gets at least $10,001. A nice little petty poke at saying you at least make more to compete in this tournament than winning ADCC. And so a lot of people defected, including the Rulatolo brothers and the I'm forgetting their last name. It's not Whitaker. Rittaker brothers. Tackett brothers defected over to the CJI Invitational because it had more money, and then they had two super fights. They had Mackenzie Dern versus Fionn Davies and Craig Jones against Gabby Garcia, a mixed gender match. Watching these matches, it was some of the most entertaining no-gi grappling I've ever seen. It's phenomenal, and especially for everyone out there and for you, Colin, you have to go look up, and it's free on YouTube. All of these matches
Oh,
are free on
really?
YouTube. Yes,
Okay.
Cade Rulatolo versus Andrew Tackett. Go look
Okay.
at Cade Rulatolo. I mean, watch Cade Rulatolo ends up, spoiler alert, winning the under I think 80 kilo division. Go watch all of Cade Kade Rulatolo's matches. It's it's some of the coolest, even if you don't know anything about submission grappling, it is some of the coolest shit you'll ever see in submission grappling. It's
Okay.
phenomenal.
Okay. Yeah,
It
I've
was
got it queued up here now.
yeah, it's so good, and his match against Andrew Tackett is, I think, the best like submission grappling I've ever seen. They also do it in like a pit, like that Karate Combat or like Yama pit that they have. So it
Oh
kind of
yeah.
like so you can't like just like butt scoot away because then you kind of run into an incline, so you get kind of naturally pulled down by gravity into things. So it makes all of the matches go to submission really fast, and like
Mm.
people can't just stall out. I think it's phenomenal. I think the production is great. ADCC was good, but the energy at CJI seemed just so much better watching a couple of the matches. It was phenomenal. It's definitely worth everyone's time to watch, even if you're not a big submission grappling head. Watch, especially, dude, just watch all of Cater Rulitolo's matches. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4 matches. It's so good. It's
Okay.
so good.
All right. All right.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. So yeah, good fights overall, dude. We got Colin, you should love this. We got a new #1 contender at flyweight. We got a new #5 contender at the lightweight division, which adds the only people in the top 5 are now action fighters. Dan Hooker, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Arman Tsarukyan, Charles Oliveira. This is just Action City. Perfect. And then we got a clear, nice passing of the torch. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about the middleweight division. DDP is the best. He beat the other top 3 middleweights that possibly had a claim to being the best middleweight, and he just fucking blew through them all. Like, this is canonical, easy, clear order. This is exactly what you love. And then good submission grappling, man. It was a good weekend. It was a good weekend.
It was. It was.
Yeah. I think I lost the bet, though, overall.
Well, I don't know, because that's the thing. It came down to our tiebreaker, and both of us on the tiebreaker, and I don't ever want to judge dick about scoring, so
yeah, they don't know dick. I can. How's this? We should do an episode, I think, together. We'll do it together because we're talking about like the history and like correcting. We thought we would correct the record on GSP, but I think what we should do is correct the record on Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya, because I've been seeing a lot of comments about how Israel Adesanya was actually never very good, and this fight proves it. And there's been a lot of like corrective history on like Anderson Silva not very good. So I think we should have a nice little recap of like how good were these two guys, and like actually put it into context for people that weren't there. Yeah, because there's such a weird thing where like the second a chance, I feel like it's a lot of like new fans where they came in maybe in 2020 or 2021, and so they've always seen these long reigning champions who got a lot of praise for a lot of the work that they did pre-2020, and then now they're losing, like Alexander Volkanovski, like Israel Adesanya, like Kamaru Usman did, like Leon Edwards just did recently. Like they go, well, they didn't do anything pre-2020, so they actually were never very good. It's like you need to actually go watch these fights.
Yeah.
So I think maybe for the next episode we should do one about Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya, because boy howdy, there's nothing much to talk about coming up this weekend. We can talk about Jared Cannonier versus Kyle Bahalio for all of 5 minutes.
I'm good.
Yeah. But watch the Cater Rulitola fight. I want to hear what you think about it.
Okay. Yeah. I'll watch that tonight.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, no, it was a good night of fights, man. It was a good time.
It was good.
And I keep going back to this time. I've been playing a lot of Total Warhammer 3. That's why I have this like real-time strategy thing in my head. But like Dricus Duplessis is the perfect thing of like picking like the most stupid class in that game, or like the stupid faction, and being like, well, they have no armor and they have no like actual logistics or tactics, but God, do they fight hard, and like that's all they've got, and that's exactly what Dricus Duplessis has. And it's like I want to see, right? Like I want to see what this is like in a weird way. Where like the people in the Byzantine Empire, when they went up against the Vikings, were like, well, we're much better about like supplying our lines, like building camps and like doing all this shit. And then the Vikings were like, we get drunk and do mushrooms, and then we burn entire camps to the ground. And you're like, well, what a weird matchup that is. That's what DDP versus Izzy was like, and I'm excited to see what happens with all the other matchups. Yeah, it'll be good. Alrighty. Well, this has been Two Fight Fans Podcast. I'm One Fight Fan, Stuart.
I'm the other Colin.
And join us later this week. We're going to talk about one middleweight fight, and then we're going to correct the record for all of you youngins out there about were the two most dominant middleweights in history: Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya, the striking savants who eventually got absolutely butchered by big athletic dudes late in their careers. All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.